What if I told you that everything you're experiencing right now, your relationships, your finances, your health, your self-image, is not a result of your actions, but of your assumptions? Not your goals, not your dreams, not even your hard work, but the beliefs you carry deep within you, those quiet assumptions you hold to be true. What if all of life is simply reflecting those assumptions back to you, like a mirror that doesn't judge, only echoes? That's exactly what the law of assumption teaches us. It's not about effort. It's not about positive thinking. It's about embodying a belief so fully, so naturally, that the world around you has no choice but to catch up. Let's begin with something incredibly simple but often overlooked. Your mind doesn't operate based on what's real. It operates based on what you assume to be real. You don't respond to reality, you respond to your belief about reality. So if you assume that people are kind, guess what? You encounter more kind people. If you assume that money is hard to come by, your experience will validate that. Not because it's objectively true, but because your assumptions act like filters, shaping how you perceive, interpret, and ultimately receive life. Now imagine the power in that. Imagine no longer waiting for the external world to change, but realizing it changes the moment you change your internal assumption. That's what makes the law of assumption so revolutionary. At its core, this law is stunningly simple. Whatever you assume to be true becomes your reality. That's it. And this principle governs every area of your life. It's not a tool you use once, it's a framework you live from. The truth is, you're already using the law of assumption whether you know it or not. Most people are using it unconsciously, assuming worst-case scenarios, assuming they're not good enough, assuming they'll be rejected or overlooked. And the universe, ever faithful, reflects those assumptions right back. So the real shift isn't in learning how to use the law of assumption. It's in becoming conscious of how you're already using it, and then choosing new assumptions on purpose. That's where the transformation begins. Neville Goddard, one of the greatest spiritual teachers of the 20th century, was the master of this law. He taught that imagination is not just fantasy, it's the tool of creation. To imagine something vividly, consistently, and emotionally is to plant it into the soil of your subconscious. And the subconscious doesn't discriminate. It accepts whatever you give it, especially if you do so with conviction. It brings forth whatever seed you plant. And assumptions are those seeds. So let's break this down even further. Think of an assumption like a silent decision. It's not a wish. It's not a hope. It's a quiet, internal declaration. This is who I am. This is how life works for me. And from that declaration, reality is molded. For example, someone who assumes they are unlucky in love will continue to encounter relationship after relationship that confirms that belief. It won't even feel like an assumption. It will just feel like reality. But if they begin to shift that inner narrative, if they begin to assume, I am always chosen, I am deeply loved, I am secure in love, the outer world begins to rearrange. Not because they're forcing anything, but because the new assumption changes the frequency they live from. And reality always bends to match the frequency you hold. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you assume. That's the heart of it. Now some people ask, but isn't that just delusion? What if I assume something that isn't true? And to that we say, who decides what's true? Reality is not fixed. It's fluid, and your assumptions are the mold. What's true for one person may be completely false for another, simply because they live by different assumptions. One person assumes money flows to them easily and lives a life of abundance. Another assumes money is scarce and lives paycheck to paycheck. Same world, same economy. Different assumptions, different experiences. That's not delusion, that's design. And here's the empowering part. You don't need external permission to change your assumptions. You don't need proof before you believe. That's the biggest trap of all, waiting for evidence before changing your belief. But the law of assumption teaches the opposite. You must believe first. You must assume it's done, and done now, and walk in that assumption with confidence, even before your five senses agree. Because your senses report what was, your assumptions determine what will be. Let's get practical now. How do you actually apply this? Step 1 is awareness. Start noticing your automatic assumptions in daily life. Do you assume the worst when you get a text from someone you like? Do you assume people are judging you when you walk into a room? Do you assume things won't work out? That's the first layer to uncover. You can't change what you're not aware of. Step 2 is revision. Once you identify a limiting assumption, revise it. This doesn't mean forcing yourself to think positively. It means gently replacing the old assumption with a new, empowered one. Instead of things never work out for me, replace it with, Everything always works in my favor. Instead of I'm invisible, try I am magnetic and seen. Don't just say it. Feel it. Believe it. Live as though it's already true. Step 3 is repetition. Assumptions are like grooves in the brain. The more you repeat them, the deeper they go. So be persistent. You didn't form your current beliefs overnight, and the new ones need nurturing too. Return to your new assumptions daily, especially in those quiet moments before sleep, when the subconscious is most impressionable. That's the prime time to plant seeds. Step 4 is detachment. This is where most people stumble. They start assuming something new, say wealth, and then check their bank account the next day. And if it doesn't match, they abandon the assumption. But the law of assumption doesn't respond to anxious checking. It responds to knowing. It responds to the kind of faith that says, it is done, even if I don't see it yet. Think of it like ordering from a restaurant. You don't keep running back to the kitchen to see if they're making your food. You place the order, trust it's being prepared, and get ready to receive. Step 5 is embodiment. Live in the end. Neville emphasized this constantly. Ask yourself, if I already had my desire, how would I feel? How would I act? What would I no longer worry about? Then start living that way now, not in pretense, but in alignment. That's what brings the assumption into form. And here's something beautiful. Once you truly shift an assumption, you don't need to micromanage the how. The bridge of incidents, the chain of events that leads you to your desire, unfolds naturally, often in ways you couldn't predict. Your only job is to dwell in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. So many people try to force things into being, not realizing they're pushing from a place of lack. The law of assumption invites you to rest, to relax into knowing, to realize that the world is not against you, it's responding to you. Let's take a moment to really drive this home with a few examples. Imagine someone who has always struggled with their body image. Their assumption is, I'm unattractive. So what happens? They carry themselves in a way that reflects that assumption, slouched posture, avoiding eye contact, shying away from compliments. They interpret neutral events through that lens. If someone doesn't say hello, they assume it's because of their appearance. Their world confirms the belief again and again. Now imagine that same person decides to change their assumption. I am radiant and magnetic. They begin walking differently, holding their head higher. They start interpreting situations differently, not because the world changed, but because their lens did. And soon, people respond to them differently. Compliments increase. Confidence rises. Not because they forced anything, but because they assumed something new and the world followed. Or take someone struggling with money. They might carry the assumption, money is hard to earn. So they overwork, they stress, they feel guilt when spending, and they attract situations that mirror struggle. Now they decide to shift their assumption to, money comes to me effortlessly. They begin to feel more relaxed. Ideas flow. Opportunities show up. They start trusting their value and raising their prices. Money begins to appear from unexpected sources. Not because of luck, but because the new assumptions shaped their behavior, their perception, and their reality. Here's the truth. You are not the victim of your circumstances. You are the author of them. And your pen is your assumption. So why doesn't everyone do this? Because it requires responsibility. It's far easier to blame external things than to admit that our inner world shapes our outer world. But once you take that responsibility, you reclaim your power. You stop trying to change the mirror and instead change the face you bring to it. The law of assumption isn't magic, but it produces magical results. It's not a shortcut, but it is a direct path. It doesn't mean you'll never face challenges, but it means you'll meet them with a different energy, a knowing that you are the operant power in your world. And yes, sometimes the old reality lingers, like smoke after a fire. But if you stay loyal to your new assumption, if you keep living in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the smoke clears. The new becomes visible, and the world reflects your inner shift. So ask yourself right now, what am I assuming about my life? About love? About success? About myself? Are those assumptions serving me? Are they aligned with the life I want? If not, change them. Not through force, not through endless affirmations, but through embodiment. Through living now as if what you want is already yours. Because it is. Once you understand the law of assumption, you'll never beg, chase, or plead again. You'll declare, you'll assume, you'll know, and the world will bend to that knowing. This is not wishful thinking, it's spiritual law. You don't get what you want. You get what you assume. So assume wisely, assume boldly, assume lovingly, and watch your world transform.